Hello everyone, I am the Basement Dweeb, you can call me Nova, and I finally watched Your Name. Now I'm sure at this point there are some of you who are saying, what does she mean she just watched Your Name? Your Name came out in 2016, and it is one of the biggest anime films of all time, like top 5 at least. It's super popular. Everyone and their mother who watches anime has seen Your Name. How dare she call herself a weeb if she hasn't seen Your Name? And technically I've already seen it once, but I didn't watch the official version or anything like that. So this was back when I was a baby weeb. I had just found Kiss Anime, and I had seen clips for this movie called Your Name. Like, I had seen like 2 anime at that point, just for context. So I think I'd seen like some of Naruto and some of Sword Art Online. That was all the anime I'd ever seen. And then I saw clips for this movie called Your Name, and I'm like, or I knew it as Kimi no Na wa, and then later I found that the English translation was Your Name, and I'm like, ooh, what's this thing? It looks very pretty. I wanna watch this. And so I scoured the internet trying to find a version that I could watch. It took me like 2 hours to find Kiss Anime, and then I pulled it up and I'm like, ooh, I like this. And so, but it turns out, looking back on it, I'm like, that was probably because I watched the dub, because I hated subbed anime. I'm like, no, subs are disgusting. I spit on them. And now I'm not like that, but I still prefer dubs. But anyway, so what I watched, I'm pretty sure was a fan dub with horrible audio quality. But so yeah, essentially I had watched a fan dub, and I had never watched, and I only seen this movie once, so I had never seen the official English dub for Your Name, and it had been, I watched this, I'm pretty sure, either early 2017 or late 2016. So I watched this movie at least 4 years ago. It has been a long ass time since I've watched this movie. And yeah, I decided to revisit it for my I Finally Watched series, because I wanted to record a video today, because I need to release something on, well, it's releasing on Sunday, but it's a Wednesday into Thursday. I'm recording at 4 in the morning, but it's pretty early in the morning. It's pretty about halfway through the week, and I'm like, I want to post something on Sunday, because it's usually when I post. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna watch Your Name, and we're gonna make a video about it. And I'm so glad I decided to do that, because I needed an excuse to rewatch this movie, because it's such a good movie, and we're gonna get into that in just 2 seconds. Actually, frick it, we're gonna get into it right now. So we're gonna talk today about sorry, it's 4 in the morning, I'm kind of all over the place. We're going to talk about a couple of things that I really liked about the movie. First, you know my general formula. We're going to talk about some things I liked, and then we're going to talk about more of the technical stuff and my general ratings for the technical stuff, and then my overall rating for the movie at the end of the video. So let's get right into it. So first thing that I really liked about this movie, the interactions with other characters, but mostly just the characters themselves, and like the attention to detail in this movie. And we're gonna get into some of the attention to detail in like the technical stuff, but the attention to detail with the characters and how they move and behave and all of that is phenomenal in this movie. It is a Makoto Shinkai movie, so I shouldn't be surprised. Makoto Shinkai does some really good work. But so in this movie, one of my favorite, particularly this particular thing stands out a lot in 2 scenes that kind of go back to back. The first one is Mitsuha waking up in Taki's body, and how she kind of goes about her day as him. And then immediately after that is the scene where Taki wakes up in his own body, and he kind of goes about his day. And you see the contrast, the very stark contrast between the 2 characters, and how completely different they are. The body language, when Mitsuha's in Taki's body, her body language is a lot more feminine. The way they the differences in their posture, inflection, how they interact with other people, the things that matter to them. It's so different, and the attention to detail there is incredible, and I love it. And because I'm sitting there and I'm like, I've seen this movie once, so I knew kind of the general process and kind of how things go, but it had been a long time, so I forgot some of the details, and I didn't even notice that when I first watched it, how much detail went into how they moved and how they talked and how they interact with other people. I love it. It's so incredibly masterful for when it came out, because I feel like Your Name kind of the concept isn't that revolutionary, if you know what I mean. Like, this isn't the first time people have swapped bodies in cartoons and anime and things like that. But the way it did this concept, this very not overly complicated concept, the masterful way in which it went about explaining how different these characters are. And that's the thing. These characters are so different, and they didn't even have to tell us how they were different or how they did it. They did these two scenes back to back, and then you understood, at least for me, when I watched it, I understood completely how different these characters were and why. Because, you know, there's differences in the way men and women interact with different things. And I just love it, because they didn't even need to explain anything to you. You watched it and you understood. And that is some amazing, amazing storytelling. And I love that so much. And the other thing that I really liked, this is just a random moment that happened, the pen drop right after, because Taki, you know, writes, "I love you" on Mitsuha's hand. And by the way, that's just so freaking cute. Mitsuha and Taki, I love their chemistry. They have so much chemistry, and it's beautiful. But so Taki writes, "I love you" on Mitsuha's hand, and then Mitsuha's about to write on his hand. And, you know, there's cute music going around in the background, and they're just kind of talking to each other. And then she writes the line, the music stops, pen hits the rock, and I'm just like, and that dead quiet that follows, I'm just like, you get the goosebumps. It hits you in a really weird way. And I love that moment, because I'm like, oh my gosh, you feel the weight, you know? And it's such a simple moment. Like, the pen doesn't have a lot of weight. It just hits the rock like a pen would hit a rock. But it has so much weight behind it, and I love it so much. It was so amazing. I had to rewatch it a couple times to analyze it, kind of. But it was so good. And, like, the use of sound and imagery in that was absolutely beautiful. But that's pretty much all I have to say. Those are the highlights of the movie for me, although this entire movie is absolutely beautiful. But those are the things that really stood out to me, that I was just like, I love these, like, the most. I love this entire movie, but, like, those are the couple of things that I love the most. The pen drop and the attention to detail in how the characters, how different the attention to detail with the characters and how they interact and move and live, and it's absolutely wonderfully beautiful. Alright, now we're gonna get into some of the more technical stuff, and we're just gonna get animation out of the way right now. You know how I do, I rank them. So, it's a Makoto Shinkai movie that came out after Garden of Words. Garden of Words, Your Name, and Weathering With You are Makoto's, in my opinion, Shinkai's best animated works, because they have newer animations, so it's very, very beautiful. Yeah, like, it's a Makoto Shinkai movie that came out in 2016. The animation and the art are S tier. Like, there's not really a lot else that I can say about it. If you've seen any clips, you know what I'm talking about. It's really pretty. We're moving on. So next we're gonna kind of go into soundtrack / sound design. There wasn't as much sound design as there was music in this movie, so we're kind of roll those together. So sound design is really good. The effects they use, like I said earlier, the pen hitting the rock was really good. Just any impact or any sound that they use is very, very good. It all works very well. But what I really want to talk about is the soundtrack. The soundtrack for this movie is absolutely amazing. All the tracks are, like, the music, like the ones that have lyrics, are absolute bangers. Radwimps did the soundtrack for this movie, and Radwimps do some pretty damn good work. I think they composed the entire thing. Like, it wasn't like they didn't do, like, the cover song, like in a lot of anime movies where, like, a band will do, like, a cover song and then, like, someone else will compose the entire thing. No, they composed the entire soundtrack, and they did a phenomenal job. All of the music in this is absolutely bangers. Like, there's no song that was bad. Like, there was never a time when I was listening to the soundtrack and I'm like, I don't like this much. No. Every single soundtrack is absolutely just wonderful, and 10 out of 10 would listen to this on repeat. It's a wonderful track. Definitely S tier for the music. The music is just so amazing. Like, if you haven't listened to the soundtrack yet, like, you have to. Like, the opening, Zen Zen Zensei, and oh my gosh, I forgot to mention that earlier. Another thing that I really liked. So when Mitsuha and Taki first realize that they're switching bodies, like the music leading up to that, and then they're like, you know, in our dreams, we're switching places, and they go straight into Zen Zen Zensei. I'm like, yes, that was my little weeb heart just skipped a beat when that happened. I'm like, yes, it's beautiful. I loved it so much. I forgot to mention that. I love that bit so much. But yeah, the music is absolutely a banging soundtrack. 100% S tier. Not a doubt in my mind. Okay, so the last technical thing we're gonna get into is gonna be voice acting, and then I'm gonna give my final rating. So the voice acting for this is also really, really, really solid. And something else that I noticed with attention to detail, they all, like, the characters that live out in Itomori, the ones that, you know, kind of live out in the boonies, they have a little bit of an accent. And I didn't notice this either when I first watched, but going back and rewatching it now, I'm like, you know, they have a little bit of like a slang accent, you know, like they live out in the boonies. Like, in America, like how, you know, I don't know how to describe the accent, but they have a little bit of an accent, and you're like, oh, they kind of live out in the country a little bit, because they do, because they live out in the mountains. And I'm just like, that is a really nice detail, because, you know, you can tell the location and kind of where they're from by how they're talking, and that is some really masterful voice acting, and it's probably due to the ADR director, or whoever adapted the script, or maybe both of them. I should have looked that up, but yeah, whoever did that, whoever was the ADR director for this movie, and whoever did the adapted the English script, y'all did fantastic. It was so wonderful. But something else that this movie's just really well cast. Yotsuha sounds like a kid. The grandmother sounds like an old lady. Mitsuha and Taki sound really good. Like, the characters they play sound like a teenage girl and a teenage boy, and then later they sound like a man and a woman, and it's really, really good. Like, when Taki first started talking, I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a teenage boy. That doesn't sound, because I love dubs, don't get me wrong, I love dubs, but I will be the first to admit, sometimes, like, and it's not bad, the voice acting isn't usually bad in any of this, but sometimes it does sound like a man trapped in a teenage boy's body, and I just kind of roll with it because I like the voice. And, you know, usually it's a case where I like the voice, but I'm like, yeah, this doesn't really sound like a teenager. Moving on, I just deal with it, because the voice acting isn't usually bad in those cases. It just, again, sounds like a man. The initial thing for Taki, he sounded like a teenage boy. His voice sounded like it was on the verge of cracking. Like, for the first 20 minutes of the film, like, his voice sounded like it was on the verge of cracking half the time. And I was like, yes! Because that's how teenage boys' voices sound. And then, you know, I feel like later in the movie, it got a little deeper. Again, I literally just finished watching it, like, 5-10 minutes ago, so I could be totally wrong, but I remember thinking that in my head, like, when I was watching it, I'm like, his voice sounds like it's kind of about to crack a little bit, and then I don't remember thinking that near the end, so I'm assuming it got a little bit deeper. Either way, really, really, really solid voice acting. Stephanie Sheh always does good work. She did really good with Mitsuha, and then obviously, what was her name? Cassandra Lee Morris? Something like that. I think the English dub voice for Taiga from Toradora. But she did Sayaka, and she was really good too. And then I don't even know Taki's English voice actor. He was great though. I only know Stephanie Sheh because she was Hinata in Naruto. Yeah, that was the one big role she had, and I think she was also in she was Yui. Duh, she was Yui in Sword Art Online. Either way, really, really solid voice acting. I'm gonna have to give it S tier. Yeah, so I still suck at segues. Oh my word. So, final rating for the film. If you've been, you know, watching the whole video, you probably know what I'm gonna give it, but I'm gonna, you know, suspend disbelief for a little bit and follow me down this road. So, when I was first watching this movie, right? When I first started watching it tonight, thinking back to how I felt when I first watched it, I'm like, oh, I'm probably gonna give it A tier. You know, like, I wasn't sure if it was a 10 out of 10. I'm like, okay, this movie, I remember being really good, like a solid 9, you know, like a very strong A, not quite S. And then I remember, and then I started watching the movie, and I'm like, and I kind of started teetering. I'm like, do I give it S? Is it really S tier? Is it really that good? And then I remember distinctly the line that threw me over the edge, that tipped the scales toward S. And it's such an inconsequential line, but I remember thinking, yeah, this movie's S tier. So, when Taki and Mitsuha are kind of talking to each other, like, through the diaries, but they're talking out loud, and Taki's like, stop wasting all my money on sweets, and then Mitsuha's like, you know, it's going in your body, and I earned that money too. Like, when she said, I earned that money too, I'm like, this movie's S tier. I have no clue why that line was the one that did it for me. But that line made me go like, you know what? Yeah, this movie's S tier. I love this movie. And then, you know, as it went on, I'm like, even if that hadn't convinced me, I'm sure I would have reached the conclusion that this movie is S tier at that point, because I do not know why I doubted this movie or why I thought it was A tier in my head, but I'm like, yeah, no, this movie deserves nothing less than S tier, because this movie is absolutely masterful in every sense of the word. Like, it's like it made so many waves in the community. And you would think for because the concept, like I said earlier, the concept is not that complicated. The concept of this movie is not a complicated concept. It's been done in other shows, mostly for like a one-off gag, but the way they choose to do the masterful, amazing way in which they choose to weave the story around the concept, that very simple concept, which, you know, turns later into how, about unions and time and connections and all of that, you know, from this very basic concept of people switching bodies and then turning into this much deeper, you know, conversation almost, discussion about time and connections and relationships and people and how one person can change your life forever and all of that and how it turns into that, the masterful way in which it does it. I can't give it anything less than S tier. That wouldn't be fair to the movie. The movie definitely earned that S tier. I'm sorry I ever doubted it. I don't know why. I mean, I'm still one of those people that likes A Silent Voice better, just from a purely story standpoint, but I definitely, like, this, like, if A Silent Voice is a 10, this is like a 9.9. They're both S tier movies, 100%, like, 9.99. Like, it's just like, A Silent Voice is just, like, Your Name Is Here, A Silent Voice is, like, here. Like, they're so close. I like A Silent Voice just a little bit better. But again, Your Name, like a 9.9, Silent Voice is like a 10. They're both S tier films. Like, I can't not give them S tier. But anyway, that's gonna wrap up today's video. It was kind of just, this wasn't very, you know, it's 4 in the morning, I'm kind of all over the place, but I really love this movie. I'm so glad I decided to revisit it. Yeah, so like, comment, subscribe. I'm going to be linking my Patreon in the description. Please, especially if you can just leave a comment, you know, just saying, hey, yeah, great video, because it pleases the almighty YouTube algorithm. So please, 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 if you could just leave comments and likes, I would really appreciate it. Even if you just leave a like saying, you know, cool shit, you know, whatever. But thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next one. I still don't have a proper outro. Bye! So this is something I completely forgot about until I was watching the footage back before editing, and I just was gonna add this here. So the reaction to Taki and Mitsuha, like when they woke up in each other's bodies, the reactions they had were like felt really natural. Like their reaction, like, you know, like, especially Taki's, because, like, let's be real. If a dude woke up in a girl's body, he would 100% touch those boobs. Like, I know that's kind of, like, but it's the truth. Like, let's be real here. More often than not, if a guy wakes up in a girl's body and he sees boobs, he's gonna touch them, you know? Especially if it's, like, a younger boy. Well, younger. Like, in the teen years, you know, that's a lot, especially if he's not super mature. That's a lot more likely to happen. And, like, you know, Mitsuha's reaction was also understandable, you know? Like, the first thing she's like, where? And then she went, what the fuck happened to my voice? Holy crap, it's so deep, comparatively. But yeah, you know, that was something else that I really liked. The reactions to waking up in the other person's body felt really realistic. So, there's that. Bye.